Powered by Riverside FM. Powered by Riverside FM.
Welcome to Do Good Work Podcast, hosted by Terrell Strayhorn and Jaquin Johnson. We specialize in taking a deep dive into issues that truly matter. Each episode unpacks the challenges and opportunities facing today's leaders, from classrooms to boardrooms, offering insights that inspire real change. By redefining success, we're changing lives, empowering people everywhere to create environments where everyone feels a sense of belonging, whether at home, work, or school. So hey, sit back, relax, grab your favorite beverage, and join us as we explore the issues shaping our futures, one meaningful conversation at a time. Let's go!
Hello to each and every one of you out there, and welcome back to another episode of Do Good Work Podcast. I'm your co-host, Terrell Strayhorn, joined by my co-host.
Hello, Jaquin Johnson.
And we are delighted to have you join us again for another episode of the Do Good Work Podcast. And we've got a delightful show planned for you with a really wonderful guest who you'll meet in just a moment. But before we get into that, you know how we do it. First, like and share across all of our platforms. We are on YouTube and X, as well as LinkedIn and Facebook. And so take a moment to be sure to share the episode out to your various pages and help us let folks know that it's time for a dynamic show with Do Good Work. And we're going to be talking with Dr. Nicholas Hartlep tonight. So like and share, and then I'll tag in Jaquin, who kicks us off with our regularly scheduled program and activities.
Absolutely. Yep. So like every show, we like to start off with using the first letter of your last name. Describe your week or day. And I will go first. I think before the show, I was just thinking about what I would say, and I think I'm gonna go with actually, I don't even know. Jazzed. This week has been extremely exciting. Presenting at NASPA, had two really good sessions in New Orleans, I believe we were, and then going over to New York to listen to Terrell speak at ACUI. Pretty packed house there, talking about belonging and the importance of it. So this week for me, I would say jazzed.
All right, I'm going to go with swift. It's been a swift week, lots of moving parts, and trying to keep up with deadlines and break times and all of the things you have to do, as well as much of what has to take place for tonight's episode. So it's good to get into the studio a little early, share out some of our assets across social media. If you haven't already, please follow us at Do Good Work on most channels, on Instagram and on TikTok. It's at Do Good Work LLC. If I'm not mistaken, at Do Good Work LLC. But follow us and subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's where you'll get the podcast every single week. And before we go into tonight's episode, let's see, Dr. Hartlep, how are you feeling? And if you use the first letter of your last name, what word comes to mind to sort of describe your general essence?
Yeah, I would say healthy. Balance doesn't start with H, but I'll say healthy.
Awesome. And what kind of week has it been for you?
Kind of even keel. So that's why I say healthy. I think, the highs and the lows right in the middle, making sure I have time for family, time for rest, going to church tomorrow. I was in the community this morning with a colleague at a United, at an event, Urban League event, recruiting for future teachers. So I would say healthy and even-keeled.
Awesome. Well, we're going to get into your commitment to strengthening the pipeline of teachers and educators in just a moment. But before we go there, again, if you are listening in, tuning in from any of our platforms, you can do the same. Sometimes people do. Drop it in the chat. We'll try to, grab it from there and share it on screen. But if you use the first letter of your last name, what word or phrase comes to mind that sort of reflects either your general essence right now or how the week has been for you? And without further ado, we are all so excited to have in this podcast studio with us tonight Dr. Nicholas Hartlep, who is the Robert Charles Billings Endowed Chair in Education at Berea College, where he also, and we're going to talk about it, chairs the Department of Education Studies. Before coming to Berea College, Dr. Hartlep chaired the Department of Early Childhood and Elementary Education, at Metropolitan State University, an Asian American, Native American, Pacific Islander serving institution, ANAPISI, in St. Paul, Minnesota. While he was there, he also served as a graduate program coordinator, and he has published, hopefully you're sitting down because I think this number has to be increased. I'm going to count at least 23 books. I'll let Dr. Hartlep give us the actual count. It says 22, but I know there's one book that's not on this bio that's out. That's The Belonging in Higher Ed. With this most recent at the time, just before the Belonging in Higher Ed book that we co-edited, he published a book called What's a Star Teacher? Again, we're going to talk about that tonight. And his book, Neoliberal Agenda and the Student Debt Crisis in the United States, was published in 2017 and became an outstanding book by the Society of Professors in Education. Listen, I could read all of his bio all day long, but that would be the entire episode. So just suffice it to say, he is a leader. He's a prolific writer. He's a teacher, an instructor, a researcher. But as you've already heard, he is a person who's got committed passions to this kind of work around justice, around equity and equality. And so without further ado, we present to some, introduce to others. By the way, you can follow him on social media at N Hartlep. We'll put it in the chat, N Hartlep. But without further ado, Dr. Hartlep is here with us in the studio. Welcome, Dr. Hartlep.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And so to get us right into the thick of things, we're going to try to have a conversation that sort of swims back and forth across these lanes of your research, your service also including your leadership, and then some of your teaching. So I have the first question. The model minority myth suggests that Asian Americans are universally high achieving. Yet, disparities exist within the group. We know this, and your research bears this out. For instance, we know that levels of attainment and success are not equal across Cambodian, Laotian, Hmong Americans, compared to some other Asian Americans where that number is well above sometimes the national average. This myth, of course, often masks the struggles and the realities of Asian subgroups, and it reinforces racial stereotypes, certainly about Asian Americans, but racial stereotypes about us all in many ways. So my question is, your research really challenges the model minority myth and its harmful consequences. So first of all, talk to us about it. What is this myth? Why is it harmful? And what should we be doing about it?
Yeah, so Terrell, I know I follow Do Good Work, and you either said it or you shared it on your platforms talking about the Trump administration kind of canceling those, or actually you're sharing AERA. AERA had posted some information and you had shared it out. And it's about essentially the restricted data sets. So I share that because I did my dissertation using a restricted data set, the ELS, Educational Longitudinal Study. And exactly what you said, Dr. Strayhorn, my dissertation study looked at that particular data set because there were various subgroups of Asian Americans, which is, unlike many data sets that just lump all Asians together. They'll say Asian American or East Asian. the ELSE data set has particular subgroups, like you said, Cambodian, Laotian, Vietnamese. And so I, at the time, did a disaggregated data analysis and again found uneven achievement and attainment patterns, because the ELSE data set looks at high school students and their transition into higher ed. And so that began my journey in terms of Asian American research and dispelling the model minority stereotype. So the model minority myth, or the model minority stereotype, is exactly how you framed it. This idea that all Asians do very well. And it glosses over those subgroups that don't do well. My biggest thing with the stereotype, and some people say, well, Nicholas, that's a good stereotype. Why would you push back against that? So what? Wouldn't you want people to think highly of yourself? And I think that's very basic thinking. Stereotypes are problematic because they limit the reality. And, all stereotypes are inherently false and wrong. And so that's kind of what I've been doing a lot of my research over the time. I will say, though, now my research has evolved because I don't have as much time as an administrator to do those technical studies. And so now I'm more interested in the application of this work on leaders, on teachers, on students. I'm in teacher education, department chair. Very few of us in teacher ed look like me. And I'm adopted. So there's another kind of intersectional identity, a Korean transracial adoptee. So I've done some research on Asian American transracial adoptees as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I mean, I think several of your points are really important for folks probably in our listening audience. I think the first is, we get that as well, depending on what group you're studying. Sometimes these stereotypes can feel or sound positive and people don't know what to do with them. But I think they can threaten to erase the experiences of some people. Well, first of all, it just ignores all of the diversity, and that's not a bad word, just the differences that exist within our racial classifications. And, people often talk about they want their story to be heard, they want their narrative to be honored. And that's not building a monument to people like people might imagine. What it really means is, like, I want, in that master narrative about Asian Americans, about African Americans, I want people to know that the experience of, Laotian students, the experiences of Vietnamese students, and that all of our stories are a mix of successes and challenges, victories and struggles. And that's what makes it beautiful in a human story. So your research really turns attention to that and takes that deep dive that moves us beyond these 5 major categories to really pay attention to the lived experiences of those who, live, lead, and study at our institutions. I'll stop there, but I definitely think right now the work you're doing is so important, because I feel like what we're seeing come out of Washington is an attempt to sort of celebrate what we all hold in common, and to downplay what makes us uniquely different. And I'd just be curious, is that your sense? Are you finding people tuning into your work and asking for more insights from your work more now during this sort of anti-DEI climate, or what's been your experience?
Well, I like, obviously you're the premier leader, an expert on belonging. And so I had an interesting conversation. University of Pittsburgh reached out and wanted me to talk about some of my work. And this person said, I've been following your work for quite some time. I want to introduce myself. And I said, oh, that's great. And I said, well, where and what spaces? Because, and she said, I'm faculty development. So it made me think sometimes your work is being used in different spaces you're unaware of. And it's like, if you knew that would be a place you should go, right? Like, so I'm like, okay, faculty, different conferences and whatnot. A colleague shared with me, and I encourage you, Jaquin, anyone listening, live or after, to go on Google the Atlantic and then Chat GPT. They have this thing where you can put in your name, and it will tell you if AI has been using your scholarship. And I'll tell you what, Dr. Strayhorn, I typed your name in. They're using it. Nicholas, of the third person. I've typed in my name. They're using me. So they, I don't know the pronoun of AI, but artificial intelligence, the large language models. And this is freely, you can do it right now, but it's out there. And so I was thinking about all of these. I think this question, as you began your show, is starting to kind of align in the sense that the important work, like my first book on the model minority stereotype, really compiled a lot of the literature. And so I'm thinking you feed that through the AI, and there's limitations of that work, right? But then I'm thinking about that narrowing, and then I'm thinking of my anecdotal story about University of Pittsburgh and faculty development, and and also the importance of and the honor of being invited to your show. It's important to have these conversations and get people's work, and you do a very good job of amplifying people's work. There is so much work to be done, and I don't view it as a competitive space. I think that the more we can share each other's work. I was recently talking with colleagues, and I said, this scholar was at Penn and was doing work on Matter, and I said, pull out your phone. Do you know this guy, Terrell Strayhorn? They're like, no, let me look. I'm like, you need to talk with him. He's a kind soul, and there you make those connections. So that's kind of the juice, I think, of this show and others. So I'm really grateful to be here.
Pleasure to have you.
That's awesome. Well, Nick, I appreciate that. And, I'm not going to Google chat GPT myself just yet. I don't have 23 books out there, and I don't have over 200 publications, but one day I will do that. So you mentioned earlier in one of your answers about being adopted in your different identities. Given that transracially adopted youth of color often experience racial identity challenges in predominantly white spaces, what role do educators and schools play in supporting their development and sense of belonging?
Yeah. And that's, there's so much to go with. I mentioned, I said healthy in the beginning of the show, and I shared that, going to church tomorrow, and this morning, my work with the United Way. And it dawned on me, I posted some photos on social media, but it dawned on me, my colleague, Dr. Keisha Guref's special ed professor, is Jamaican. I'm Korean. And then our admissions recruiter from Berea College was at the table right next to us, African-American male. And the students, we had the youngest, I think, was a sixth grader, seventh grader. Oldest was a high school senior. And when they came and they saw people that looked like them, so that ethnic matching of the teacher and the students, I think that's so vital. In the case for me, growing up in primarily white spaces and attending public schools, I was mislabeled. And that's partially why the model minority stereotype, I think, that research came to me during my PhD studies, because I was curious. I was not labeled a model minority. I was not seen as a smart kid. I was actually told by teachers, 2-year college. And I thought deep down in my soul, I was like, I love learning. What are you talking about? A 2-year college? Man, I might be a lawyer. I might be a doctor. At that point, I didn't know. So I guess to come back to Jaquan, is the role that those teachers have is not to limit the futures of those kids, of students. And I live that out, so when we meet the students, we give them folders with information, trying to recruit them and print in their mind. And I say, young man, you look like a scholar. You are the one of the sharpest kids that have come up to my table. Tell me about yourself, and to really feed their spirit with positivity. That's our first interaction. We don't know. And sometimes, as you know, in the research, the teachers don't know the backgrounds and the cultures, the communities, and they can say things that are very debilitating and counterproductive. And so that's why I come from it from an appreciative inquiry standpoint, always starting with strengths, always starting with the positivity, always thinking about the future. And that's what the teachers really need to be doing, for all students, not just students of color, but all students. Because sometimes you don't know, that might be the only positive voice or adult or interaction that child will have that entire day.
Oh, I think you're muted. Are
What
you
what
muted?
might that mean?
Oh, no. Okay, maybe it was me.
I'm sorry, it came in and out.
For our audience, so you introduced a term, appreciative inquiry.
Mhm.
And for our audience members who don't know what that means, how would you
Yeah.
define it?
Yeah. There's different technical terms used within it, but on a basic level, it's this idea of it can be applied to many different things, but in terms of leadership application, it can be used as a model for how an individual leads an organization or unit, insofar as looking at people and framing opportunities instead of problem solving. It starts with strengths. So, things that I've done in my department, we did the Strength Finder, Gallup Insight Strength Finder, to understand people's strengths and abilities, to better articulate teams, putting together teams. But another is just even how I frame, there's enough work out there that we can lift each other up and amplify each other's work. That would be kind of coming from that frame of appreciative inquiry, because we're better together and building on our strengths. And so it might seem very basic. It's not just all positive stuff, right? Like, oh, positive psychology, we just all think happy thoughts. No, there'll be challenges, but it's how do we think about our organization? I'll give you an example. Sometimes it's best to go outside of the organization. New thoughts, fresh ideas, neutral, objective people. But sometimes it's good to look internal into the organization for certain things. Because if you constantly go outside, you're not appreciating the talent on your team, right? And so I can remember at times at different institutions I've been at, they're like, oh, well, we need somebody to bring someone in that knows this work. And it's like, oh, that's my research agenda. Right? How does that make you feel if your home team doesn't even know? You got someone on the bench that could hit one out of the park for you. Sorry for all the sports metaphors, but they go outside, right? And then especially if it's context matters. If it's a primarily white institution, doesn't matter, but all of these intersecting things can really make you feel like you don't belong, feel like, oh, I don't matter. And so appreciative inquiry, I call it the other AI, not the artificial intelligence. Pork, the other white meat. The other AI. Yeah.
Nick, you talk about you did an event with your colleague today, recruiting students. You said from 6th grade to some high schoolers.
Yeah. So they had the Urban League put on an event, Lift, and forgive me, I don't know what I forgot what the LIFT acronym stands for, but it was held at our local high school, actually the high school my daughter goes to, my daughters rather. I have a freshman and a senior, and 9 to 12, and they had vendors that had, universities, colleges were there, as well as other CBOs, community-based organizations for students that are looking for summer jobs and stuff. So we had a table for Berea College, and we were tabling, trying to imprint in the idea of becoming a teacher. And we had, I would say, a strong 10 students who said, yes, when I become college eligible, I'd like to be a teacher. And so we give the literature, all the swag items, and try to stay in touch through the admissions office.
I like that. So what do those conversations look like or sound like, especially when you're trying to let these students know that Berea is an option for them?
Yeah.
And some of those students, they don't know if they want to go to college, or some of them may feel that they don't belong in college. So what are those conversations? How do you approach them?
Yeah, and it ranges. So imagine a high school gymnasium with long tables all on the perimeter, and all of like a science fair with tables. And then you have students that kind of roam, and you can see it in their eyes and their body language. You have some who are confident, and not only say confident, but familiar, that they've either been socialized, or they know kind of what to expect, and so it's more natural. Then you have some really shy students who kind of walk around and they're looking for the invitation, right? And so Keisha and I, hey, come on over here. Come on over here. We want to give you a pen, stickers, and all this. And Keisha, she's a special educator, so she brought some fidgets and different things, and giving to the students. Then you have some with their parents. Some had parents there. The conversations look like, hey, I'm a single mom, my child, and like, oh, let's talk about the affordability of Berea College. Let's talk about, the tuition, no tuition promise that you'll get a tuition scholarship. The big thing to me is the humanity in it, that every student there deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. To say, hey, you might be first generation, you might be second generation, it doesn't matter. You could make a positive contribution to the Berea College community. Of course, Berea College has eligibility requirements, largely financial, meaning usually most of our students are Pell eligible, but then also many of our students are first generation. And so thinking about that, Jaquan, like, how does that look like? I couldn't believe it. Also, I'm a former teacher, but human development, Lord, the range from a sixth grader to 12th, they come in all different shapes, sizes, heights, facial hair, and it's like sometimes they could pass as older than they are and younger. So I'm like, first off, my first question is, what grade are you in? What school do you attend? Oh, I'm here and there, and so it's so great. That was life-giving to me. I love that type of work, and I don't know if it's common for department chairs to do that work. I've been told at Berea it's not, but I absolutely love it. I love to be talking with those people, and trying to recruit them. Like I tell them, and I think that's something that we need to understand too. Like some of these, not just men but women, they want to be an athlete. They want to play sports, and a Division III is a great place to do sports because you can have a life outside of your academics. It's not just D1, right? And so a lot to offer for sure.
Yeah, it seems to me that part of your passion that clearly comes through for that work is also related to your commitment to studying teaching as a profession, teaching pathways, teacher effectiveness. So some of the research that I looked at before the show suggests that research on teacher effectiveness shows that the top 10% of teachers can produce up to a year and a half of learning in students, versus those at the bottom half who produce much less. So teacher effectiveness is also measured by what they do for their students and through their students. And so you have a book called What Makes a Star Teacher? And it explores 7 qualities of the most impactful educators. So in your view, based on your work, what distinguishes a truly transformational teacher from an average one? And how can institutions like your own or mine or others recruit and retain, even train more star teachers?
Yeah. So the star teacher work is with my colleague Valerie Hill Jackson in Houston. She teaches at Texas A&M and really builds off of Martin Haberman's work. The primary disposition is perseverance. That those star teachers never give up, and they're constantly solving problems and responding to challenges. They no matter what stands in their way, they continually try new things, which really makes sense in a basic level, because when you try and you reflect as a teacher in the classroom, and a strategy might not work for a student, the next day, what are you going to do? And you might try something else. Some people who give up early and don't have persistent problem-solving dispositions, they will maybe just say, I tried, it's just not working, or nothing will get through to this kid. It's them, it's not me, it's their family, and they'll move on. You're absolutely right that those star teachers can make learning growth, to your point, a year and a half, 2 years sometimes. I'm really interested. Dr. Hill Jackson and I are considering doing another book here soon with ASCD. Part of the research that we did out of Chicago teachers, people in Chicago public schools, and it's dated a little bit, we were finding that there were some star teachers leaving the classroom. But an interesting thing is that they were going into leadership. So you talk about retention, retention means a lot of things, but it can mean that we're not losing them outside. They're not leaving the field completely. So imagine a Chicago public schools teacher, a Milwaukee public school teacher, Houston ISD teacher. They are a star teacher, but then they leave and they become a principal. It could be argued that that's going to help more children than them staying and just being an effective teacher. And Dr. Haberman, his work did look at administrators too. So he's got this star teacher pre-screener, but he also developed an instrument for administrators, effective administrators. So I'm really interested in thinking about effective teachers that go into leadership. Mm-hmm. I hate to say it, but you can publicly take the star teacher pre-screener. Just look up the foundation, Haberman Education Foundation, and you can take the instrument. It's like 50 questions. But I went into leadership because I just saw the multiplying effect, that if I could affect more people, then I could affect more kids. So that's why I became a teacher educator, and now wanting to be a leader in the field for teacher ed.
So prior to higher ed, you were a teacher?
Yes, I was an elementary school teacher.
What grades?
Second grade. But I've taught other classes, but mostly I'm a second grade teacher, which was funny. I had a conversation with Keisha today, and, no filtered through, as they say, no cap. I said, Keisha, these middle school kids, I like these middle school kids. Back in the day when I was younger, they intimidated me. And that's why I went into elementary. I could see myself working with middle school kids now. So yeah. And just an idea for all those administrators out there. If you use this idea, you got to credit it to me. I think it would be great that deans of colleges and schools of education, you get your pennies together, you get your money, and you incentivize people that go on sabbatical. They go back into K-12 schools and teach a year. They can write about the experience, Greg Mitchie and others that have done that work, but go back to the classroom and then come back to higher ed. It will energize you. It will allow you to stay current, and you will allow you to really see how the field has changed. If you're a teacher educator and you're not in classrooms, at least, once a week, I would say once a month, you are losing and not staying current in the field. The schools are changing every day, minute by minute. And as someone who's trying to stay current, it's awesome. There is so much positivity, things that teachers are doing in public schools right now. It's amazing.
I agree. I have to give a lot of credit to K-12 educators, public or private, just the amount of work that they do, everything they have to deal with nowadays, all the continual changes in the curriculum, students' behavior. My mom was a second grade teacher for, I think, 20-ish years. Now she's she's in middle school now teaching science. And as a recruiter, I kind of can hear, some of the things I experienced as a recruiter and a college recruiter is that, I always ask students, like, who's your favorite teacher? And they will give me someone like, Mr. T. Why is Mr. T your favorite teacher? And one thing that was kind of consistent throughout was they would say, ooh, I'm trying not to choke up when I say this because I hear it so many times. It's like, that person never gave up on me. And that's so powerful as educators, although they do go through a lot, we have to appreciate and acknowledge that. But, not giving up on the students, they remember that. They may not remember 2 + 2, but they do remember that you gave them a chance every single day. So what would you say to those educators who want to give up?
Yeah. So there are, teachers burn out. It's a very demanding profession. Burnout, rust out, whatever you want to call it. We know that teachers need mental health support and training. And that's why people have done a lot of research on meditation and different strategies. And that's why I know Dr. Strayhorn, I know others, they really live out what they say. It's important to remain balanced and sometimes teachers, I think they can lose sight of it and they need support. So at Berea College, for instance, we are blessed. We have financial resources that we can share with local school districts. And we can cover substitute teachers so that people can go to a training. We can pay for a conference. But just recently, we have a local school district who is going to have a tremendous amount of budget cuts. So some teachers will lose their positions. And so right now the community is in a lot of pain around that. And so what I'm trying to say is it's serious. Not only do the kids need, the students, the K-12 students need that support, the adults need that too. The adults need that. I think about my kids' school. This was maybe 1 year ago, 2 years ago, a crossing guard was hit for an elementary school and was killed. And it affected all those kids that every day saw, I don't know his name, it was a male crossing guard. But it also affected the teachers, because that elementary school, he was part of that community. And so we just have to be really mindful. And I think the profession needs to be mindful of supporting teachers and their mental health. So if they need to see a therapist, they should. If they need a break, sabbaticals, that idea for education, ministry, that's big, that Sabbath, you take that day of that year of rest. And I think we're forgetting, do you remember COVID-19? There were some people, it was the best of times. It was the worst of times. If you were, what was the term? Something labor where you had to be there. I forget that word. There's
Essential.
Yes. And now we're on that rat race, just running, and we forgot. And so the teachers, though, yeah, we need to support. And the teachers that say, hey, they're burnt out, then maybe they need to transition to another profession or take a break. Because if you don't have the heart, if your heart's not in it, and if you're phoning it in as a teacher, the kids, they're the first to notice. So do right by the kids. You might need to think of a different profession.
I'm thinking about, there are a lot of people right now who are spending time intentionally talking about recharging and resting and self-care. I want to get into some middle management things. I know we've got a question for you about policy, and it's the time for it because of all that's happening. But as a department chair, as an active scholar, as an engaged scholar, what does rest, recharge, and self-care look like for you?
Yeah, this has been an area of growth for me. So I have an executive coach, and we talk. We have monthly check-ins. I also have a counselor that I see weekly, and those two things make a world of difference. Right. So it looks like for me, healthy. It means all domains. It means my diet. Here I'm chugging water. Kentucky, Jaquan, you're in Kentucky, right? I'm not sure what state you're in, but allergy season, there's so much stuff. So like
it's
water.
horrible in Kentucky. Yes.
Yeah, right now is allergy season. So staying healthy, balanced, enough sleep, and taking my 1 day of rest. But in general, as you know, jobs like a chair and up, you could work 24/7 and the to-do list is still there. And so that is one of the problems of an academic. You get the freedom of schedule in some respects, but that also means you could work all the time. So the area of growth that I've seen is putting up boundaries to say, even though I've historically been accessible at any day, any time, is putting up on my phone, do not disturb. They got the new app or the update on the iPhones, artificial intelligence thing where you can minimize distractions. So that's what it looks like for me, trying to be present. It's a daily struggle, though.
It's fair. And we appreciate those ideas. And so folks who are tuning in or dropping things in the chat, if you drop something in the chat, a question, we'll certainly raise it for Dr. Hartlep, or any other comment, we'll put it on the screen. But let's talk about this because you are also a department chair, and you're an experienced department chair. This is not your first department that you've led. And many people would say, middle managers in higher ed often face burnout, according to research, with nearly 70% reporting high stress levels. I know not you, but other people. And 40% actually considering leaving their roles. That's according to data from the American Council on Education. It's department chairs, not provosts and deans, who on a day-to-day basis have to navigate tensions between faculty, administration, students, dealing with scheduling, budgets. I'm just trying to talk about the job for people who don't know this, and external stakeholders, while often receiving, one, little formal training for this role, and two, relatively few rewards. So As an experienced department chair yourself, many people say middle management is like herding cats. How do you see the role? And what kinds of supports are necessary to help department chairs effectively do this job?
Yeah, for sure. I've heard that in terms of middle management, a department chair is harder than being a dean, right? Because you don't have much power and authority. Um, I think the resources needed are, I mentioned before, I have an executive coach. Now, most people are going to say, oh, that's for decanal leadership or above. I would disagree. I would say a department chair and above, you need an executive coach. So I've been blessed that Berea helps me with that. And you're absolutely right. The research is undeniably clear that there is not training for being a chair. I'm in a program right now, New Leaders Academy. Was at University of Michigan. Now it's at Utah. That's been lovely and very helpful for me. Um, yeah, I've been a department chair for nearly a decade, and um, you see a lot of. I'm in the field of ed, so I'm a little biased. I don't know what English departments look like and everything. In our field, a department chair usually is a national search. An outside person comes in. You need to know accreditation. You need to know programs, evaluation, and all of that. So it's not a rotational thing. It's not like, okay, I have 3 years, I'm in purgatory, and then I'll get my freedom back. It's not like that. I've also seen a lot of deanships in education become vacant. And that's a pattern that we're seeing. And so when there's a lot of opportunity, people do job hop and people move out of positions. We also know the research Chronicle of Higher Education has shared it. People ascend for salary reasons, right? Anyone that knows about leadership, though, you'd have to equivalate the salary to the challenge of the job as well as the difficulty. So people have done, if you're a faculty and you teach your courses, you might not, you might actually make more per hour of work. Um, I love being a department chair because of the challenge, and also the proximity to the curriculum and students. When you get into a deanship role, you get more distance between you and the students that you claim to serve. So I like the fact I have relationships with college students, and I like that I can push curriculum and affect change. We're starting a dual certification program here in April. We have a vote. If it passes the college this fall, we will be able to offer a special ed dual certification, the first of its offering at Berea. We've never had this program, so teacher candidates rather will be able to get an elementary teacher certification as well as a K-12 special ed certification for the state of Kentucky. Obviously, equity reasons, this makes good sense, and also just in terms of preparation, because the classroom is becoming more diverse, neurodiversity, different forms of learning challenges, and so that's why I like being a department chair for sure.
Yeah, it's such important work. And as a faculty member, I know, many people in higher ed and even beyond will probably be familiar with the fact that our institutions are run by presidents. The academic enterprise is typically overseen by a vice president for academic affairs or a provost. Most schools and colleges are led by deans, but never, ever, ever underestimate the importance of the department chair. At one of my previous institutions, well, I won't even speak in code because I've only had a couple of institutions. So my first institution, I remember having the experience of having a very good department chair, which for me, there's certain criteria for that. Is someone who they are a cheerleader, because I think there is a part of the role where you're cheerleading. I mean, I was a brand new assistant professor, tenure track. I needed someone who was more senior than me, who could encourage me to keep doing the kind of work I was doing, who could also coach me, to your point about coaching, to say, like, here, that kind of stuff won't matter as much. So maybe do less of this, but honor my passions and my commitments and give me guidance about how to do it. I think a good department chair knows their team, to your point earlier, so I've had a department chair who, at the college convocation, literally has to ask, like, who's in my department and what do you study and what are you teaching and what do your students go on to do? And I think there's a lot of room for improvement and that kind of leadership, because how can you lead a group if you don't know what they're doing, you don't know who their students are? I think this is a mix of those kind of roles. I think lastly, though, and this is a hard question, we didn't prep you for this one, but my president, who just told me this week I don't talk about him enough, so I'm gonna say it again, Dr. Hakeem Lucas. Dr. Hakeem Lucas. Anyone who is watching this, if you know him, tag it in it. The 13th president of Virginia Union University, the one, the only, President Hakeem Lucas, often talks to his leadership team and talked to me throughout my time being at Union about the fact that most department chairs, you ready for this, Dr. Hartlep?
Yeah.
Want to be a dean.
And
that good deans should be provosts.
Yeah.
And that great provosts should be presidents. And outstanding presidents should be chancellors of systems. I mean, he talked very directly about this, matter-of-factly about it. And so as a successful and experienced department chair, what are your aspirations for leadership? And particularly, I know it's not just to have another title, but the kind of change you really want to affect in higher ed.
Yeah, and that does make sense again, because it goes into impact, right? As I mentioned before, teacher, educator. Yes, I'd like to be a dean of a college of education or a school of education. My PhD is in urban education, but I'm comfortable in urban spaces and rural and suburban, lived all over. People are people when you think about it, right? The challenge, though, that we have is people of color, people that look like you and me, we don't get the opportunities that mainstream white majority culture, cis, right, people get. And so that becomes a challenge. And I think of my journey in educational leadership has been one of seasons. There have been seasons, good seasons and challenging seasons, but overall it's like that, I hate to say it, cast iron, seasoned cast iron, a cast iron pan that's seasoned, those are the best to cook in, right? They're like Teflon, nothing sticks to it, it's good. And so when the time's ready, when the right moment hits, I would assume I would be a dean. And can't say much further than that. So one thing also that I see in my own research is that people of color, excuse me, my allergies, we have this idea of a glass cliff. And sometimes you get opportunities to lead when an institution is going downward, and you don't know that necessarily when you come in. You can do the campus interview and you really don't know, and you can't detect, right? They conceal it either intentionally or unintentionally, but it just doesn't surface. And sometimes then you're in a position of leadership where you're really starting behind the 8 ball. And so that's something that all people listening and all people that are have served in leadership, you know this idea, or maybe you've had it personally, that experience. So there's a lot of challenges and landmines that we have to think about as we apply for positions and seek sponsorship for these positions.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I definitely, you got my support for a deanship. I think that what I like about you continuing your leadership journey is seeing already how you have used your leadership to celebrate the successes of others, to create opportunities for others who look like all of us and look like our listening audience. And you need, it's just become a bad word, but you need equity-minded leaders like that who are selfless, who, you've got, I don't know what your award wall looks like because you got a ton of them, but you don't just stack up awards for yourself. You create space for others to be celebrated. And I think that's what we need in leaders, more leaders in higher education. But thanks for that question. Jaquin has a question for you.
Well, before I go to the question that we shared with you, I want to know, you recently won an award called A Teacher Who Made a Difference. If you want to talk to us a little bit more about that one.
Yeah, so that, from my understanding, the University of Kentucky, their College of Education, it's an annual program. So I was nominated by a local superintendent for my work on special education. Listeners might not know, I'm a fairly transparent person, so I feel very comfortable. My daughters know this. I was a general ed teacher, elementary. I had one special ed course in my training. If I would have known more about special ed, I think my spirit really would have moved me to be a special educator. I have 3 daughters, and they all have some form of learning difference. And so they're serviced in some form or fashion. And that's why we got to be aware of following what the Trump administration is doing and attempting to doing, but 504s, IEPs, different things, right? And so the superintendent nominated me for that award for the work, starting a dual certification program, right? So as department chair at a liberal arts, some of the leadership responsibilities that Dr. Strayhorn shared, Jaquin, is like pushing programs, innovation, accreditation, and signing off, even though, I'm not a dean. Interesting enough, just what Terrell said, I nominated our special ed professor because Dr. Keisha Greer F's, and actually she's probably listening in. She might be. She was in the morning with me recruiting students. She is such a dynamic person. This is her second year. She's finishing her second year. She was a teacher in Memphis public schools, special ed, has a heart of gold, has done so much positive work. So I just nominated her. And so it was interesting. We both received an award. So it was nice.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations
Thank you.
from us. And I agree that, what you said in terms of, in one of your programs, you talked about students with disabilities. It was very limited, and that's same with my training too. I think we have to do a better job of really talking about those students because they're in our classrooms, right? And we have to figure out how we can best serve them. I think even in teacher prep programs, and for teachers who are already in the classroom, need to learn more about IEPs and 504 plans and the laws around students with disabilities. But I think that they get pushed aside too much, which is really why some of those barriers are there in their education. But question is, given your research on race in education, what policy changes would you prioritize to create a more equitable K-12 and higher education system?
Yeah, we've been doing some work in Kentucky. I'm the president of CACTI. Each state has an affiliate in the AACTE organization. So the American Association for Colleges of Teacher Education. So as president of CACTI, I help facilitate all the 26 EPPs in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And the CACTI leadership, not just myself, but the e-board, we're trying to lean in to policies that Frankfurt, our capital, bills that they're writing. That can range from testing to rules and regulations. And One thing that has really happened recently that really happy for student teachers in the state of Kentucky get a stipend. I think it's like $4,000, $4,600. So when their semester teaching, if a student teach in the state and they're a resident of Kentucky, they can they get that money, and it's just free money. So I don't know if it's an award or a grant, but they don't have to pay it back, and it's not conditional. Um, I think that's great, but I also think that just because you're Kentucky, why not have it if you're student teaching and you're in doing your teacher training at an EPP in Kentucky? Why can't you get that money? So if you come from Georgia and you're studying here and you're getting your degree, why can't you get that stipend? And I think that it might be a recruitment tool to say, hey, and also a tool to keep somebody. So if Georgia, Tennessee, if someone comes and studies and student teaches, why can't they be eligible for that money, right? I'm sure there's rules and rationales for it, but it's something that I've voiced publicly in various meetings, and no one has said it was a bad idea in those meetings. So those are just a few examples of things that CACTI is trying to do to be more equitable.
As we sort of wrap up for the night, we got two sort of thoughts for you. I mean, the first is, I mean, you clearly have already invested a significant amount of time and energy in higher education. But let's say that you weren't working in higher education. What would Dr. Nicholas Hartlep be doing?
I'll be driving Lyft.
Is this because you like to drive, or is this because it's a...
No, there's two. If I wasn't, well, you said if I'm not in higher ed,
Yeah.
I would be in K-12 or I'd be driving Lyft. and the reason being is I'd be in K-12, of course, because I'd be teaching. But what I see a challenge right now, and it's that our society, there are invisible people. There are invisible people, and I'm not just talking about the people that felt like, that voted for Trump and they're like, oh, we've been forgotten. Yes, I'm talking about you, I guess, but I'm talking about other people. There's so many people that have forgotten. Poor people, homeless people, unhoused people, people with addictions, people, right? And I'd be driving Lyft because it would be an opportunity to be with different people. Well, and let me just be honest. I drove Lyft. I do it on the weekends occasionally. And I'll tell you what, that's a sociological, magnificent, humanizing experience. My wife's hours were cut. And so at the hospital, so I picked up working, driving Lyft on the weekend. And I'll tell you what, having to drive someone to a recovery center, driving someone with with a blind person with a seeing eye dog, driving someone in a wheelchair, having to take out a wheelchair out of the trunk and help them get in the wheelchair, picking up some, right? Point being, there's some beauty in that, and it makes you just be in touch with reality. And to me, we're not connected in ways that we should be. Like our communities, there are people that are in need, and we're not serving their needs. So maybe driving someone, I meet a need. So those are the two places I would be in a heartbeat, either driving Lyft, and also, yeah, I can listen to my podcast when I'm driving Lyft. So it's a win-win situation.
True.
Yep.
You're speaking my language. I definitely, I sort of fantasize about that, making time to drive Uber or Lyft. I have not taken the time to go through the process to get the app so that I can do it. But I have also talked a lot about, or working at Starbucks or some coffee shop where, my motivation has been to meet people.
Yes.
But not just the people that we bump into in higher ed,
Yes.
everyone, everyday people, someday people, to stay close to the students and families and people we're trying to help.
Maybe a grocery store, because we have those where you bag your own, but they still got a few of them where you bag it. You could talk with people, be like, "How's your day going?" Yeah,
absolutely.
Grocery store. In the people, we're in the field of people engaging people. Yeah, coffee shop would be great too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're wrapping it up exactly where we want to be, and that is, we are supposed to be in the business of people engagement.
Yep.
But if you're not careful, no slam to anyone, but it is a critique of our field. I was just talking to a guy today who has lost hope in higher ed. I mean, I'll let him tell his own story, get him on the podcast one day. But he's lost hope because he feels like we have become this ivory tower that is separate and away from the people, where we rattle our last names through citations to each other and, impress each other with our citation counts and awards. But everyday people are not being impacted by this work. And more importantly, his point is right now the world is hurting. And most of us, kind of carry on, teach our classes, go to our conferences, do what we're going to do. So I want to close there and ask, there's a lot going on in the world, executive orders left and right, one to threaten the closure of the Department of Ed, that no doubt every single pundit and speaker has made clear that will impact, if nothing else, teacher education. So as a leader, speaking to our audience, what are your thoughts about what's happening in the world right now? And what is the leadership that we need? What can people do who are feeling beaten up and downtrodden about all that's happening? What can you offer for those who aspire to do that good work?
Yeah. First off, let me say there are moments when I get, like everyone else, frightened. But remember, that's their strategy. What we need to do is not isolate ourselves, to pick up the phone, to text, to check in, to call, to have a Zoom meeting, to visit our neighbor, literally our neighbor, your neighborhood, right? People, to connect and talk about these things. Because when the more talking happens, the more we understand that we're not alone, and we're not the only ones feeling this way. I have a colleague who reached out to me and said they were denied tenure. And the first thing I said was nothing. I just listened. And there was this moment. And I said, I will always be here for you if you need to talk. I've also had texts from people who have lost their jobs from Department of Education, FEMA, other organizations. That can be frightening when you have bills to pay and family members that you have to take care of. We need leaders that aren't afraid to speak up when it's right. And right now it's a right time to speak up. This is the moment where I heard people, Terrell and Jaquan, say, well, we weren't alive when there was slavery. And if there was slavery, I would speak up, and I would speak up. That was morally wrong. But those same people aren't speaking up. And we're in a modern day form of fascism. I was just driving in my community in Lexington. I live in a community called Hamburg. And there were a bunch of protesters having signs, honk if you're in support of this. And they were talking about in support of female reproductive rights. public education, all of this, right? It was clear they were against the Trump administration. And you know how many horns I heard? And I know we're in Kentucky. I only heard mine. It's the only one. And baby, I pressed that. I was going crazy. Because never, right? You're just going crazy. And it was fun. I did a loop. I came back. And then I kid you not, 4 times. It was fun. But those little acts, and we need to speak up. So, and show up for people. Those people that right now that we need to show up for the people that have lost their positions, that are in threat, they're in duress. Folks with immigration issues, they're concerned about all of the people. It's not just one population that's under attack. All of us are, and they come for us. I said it at the panel. If they come for me, they're going to come for you tomorrow night. And our silence does not save us. This is our moment, and so that's what I would challenge us. Easier said than done, I know. If you need to speak up in a pair, you talk with colleagues and like, okay, let's do this together. And it's a little more brave, easier to do. But we need leaders that aren't going to back down against, we're talking about the Constitution. We're talking about civil rights, human rights. It's crazy. And I think there's a lot of bystanding going on. That's the bystander effect, right? And so the more upstanders we have, the more that people speak up, then there's the tipping point, and there's more people of saying, no, we're not going to stand for this. It's wrong. And we can feel more comfortable. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I love it. It is time for more upstanding than bystanding and downstanding. By the same token, appreciate your perspective on this, because one of the things that I know we try to do, and I'm certainly committed to doing, is shining a light on the people who are impacted by this. Because we often talk about like, oh yeah, they're threatening to close certain things. But to those in our listening audience, and many of you likely know this, but one, like, they have closed things. There are people without jobs. There are chief diversity officers who do not have an office, no longer have a team, no longer have jobs. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of people who once worked for the Department of Ed who no longer have jobs, no longer work for them. Some who are writing about it on LinkedIn. One who I know, I was on his dissertation committee, and he, after getting his doctorate done, landed a federal job working actually at one of the national centers, and no longer has a job. So real people are being impacted, and we need to figure out how can we push back against this and make sure that people are taken care of. And to your point about what you said about honking your horn. So I have a hoodie I have several hoodies that have different statements on them. One of them that I wore this week says, if you don't love people, you can't lead Black people. And, the moment I put it on, people celebrated it and said, oh, I like this, I want this. Compliments of creations by Kimmy. That's my sister's company. So shout out to my sister. But I was also on a plane this week, and I forgot what I had on. And I sat beside a gentleman. I don't know his name, but I did notice some hostility toward me and in his voice. Later, I observed him watching Fox News on his cell phone. You make the correlation. And I thought to myself, man, yeah, sometimes even what you wear, the shirt you wear, the hoodie you wear, one, can make a statement. It can be a form of resistance, but it can also make you a target. And it's a target of just bad energy, a target of, undue hostility. And so to those who are out there, Dr. Whitty, thank you so much for engaging. You're right. We need to show up, stand up, speak up, and act up. I like that last part, act up. And so, to wrap up what promises to be a really dynamic episode, we like to say it this way. And listen, if you're going to do something, don't be afraid to go out here in the world right now and do something. But if you're going to do something, do something good. And the stuff that we're talking about is good work. Thank you so much, Dr. Hartlep, for being here. We got to have you back on the episode. And to every single one of you, thanks for tuning in. Until next time.
Thank you for tuning in to Do Good Work Podcast. We hope you found today's conversation informative, uplifting, and insightful. Don't forget to like and share this episode with your networks. Follow us on social media at Do Good Work on X, formerly Twitter, for real-time updates, behind-the-scenes content, and so much more. Until next time, friends, don't be afraid to do something, but do something good. Do good work.